Hi, I'm Steve Whaley with Alliance Autogas, and here we have one of the Buncombe County Sheriff's Department's 10 vehicles that have been converted to propane autogas. And this is what it looks like on the system, on the engine. We don't take anything off of the existing OEM system, but we do overlay an additional fueling system to allow it to run on propane autogas instead of gasoline. It consists of a computer that is an ECM that sisters up to the Ford OEM ECM. We have a reducer where the line of propane coming from the trunk comes in here, but then it splits off into these two fuel rails over here and over here. Each of those fuel rails has an injector for each one of the cylinders, so the fuel comes into the intake manifold exactly where it does with the gasoline as well. So that allows us to be a bi-fuel system running on either propane or gasoline at the push of a button. And here I'll demonstrate. Right now it's running on propane, and if I push this button, and now we're running on gasoline. If I push the button again, and now we're running back on propane. This is the only operator interface that the driver needs to deal with. The 4 green lights is indicative of it being full of propane. As the green lights disseminate down to 3 and 2, you'll have a quarter of a tank. But anytime that you want to switch back to gasoline, you can push the button and now you're running on gasoline. And now you're running on propane. Propane being $1.50 a gallon cheaper than gasoline, not many folks are running on gasoline, but it's nice to have it there just in case. The dispensers for propane are very much like the gasoline dispensers with a hose and a nozzle that very much looks like it, except for this, there's a sealed surface that goes right into that remote fill for the gasoline, for the propane tank on board the vehicle. With a squeeze of a button, we get to fill it in about 2.5 minutes. To fill the propane tank is right next to the gasoline remote fill. We have a remote fill for putting in the nozzle for propane and filling it up. We pump at about 10 gallons a minute, so filling a 22-gallon tank like this here takes about 2.5 minutes to refuel. Very comparable to what gasoline is. The range of this tank is exactly the same range as a gasoline tank, it being 22 gallons and the gasoline tank being 18 gallons. So they don't compromise on performance or the range of the vehicle and still save $1.50 a gallon in fuel costs. Propane's 105 octane, so the performance compared to gasoline is actually a little bit better. Law enforcement doesn't like to compromise on their performance when they're chasing bad guys, so we meet that challenge with an alternative fuel made right here in the United States.
I am Chelsea Jenkins with RALEIGH Clean Tech, and I'm here today at this Propane Roadshow to talk about propane autogas, which is actually the world's most widely available alternative fuel. There's actually 17 million vehicles worldwide already running on propane autogas, and it's the most widely available infrastructure in the United States. We spend $700,000 a minute on imported oil. We import almost half the oil that we consume in the United States. It's about $1 billion a day that we send overseas. We have a resource here, propane, that used in vehicles is called autogas, and it costs less. Today, the per barrel price of oil is about $105. Gasoline's averaging about $3.85 a gallon, diesel's over $4 a gallon, and all of the fleets that I work with at RALEIGH to deploy propane autogas vehicles are paying generally under $2 a gallon. So we have a resource that's cheaper. It's also domestically available. About 70% of the propane that we have in the United States comes from natural gas processing. So as we develop more natural gas in the United States, we'll automatically have more propane. So it's a domestic resource, and it's cheaper, and it's also cleaner. A lot of fleets that I work with choose propane autogas over different alternatives because it's cheaper. So traditionally it's been about 30 to 40% less than gasoline. It's cleaner, so you're going to see a reduction in emissions on carbon monoxide, nitrogen oxides, as well as particulate matter. And it's also very easy to install infrastructure.
My name is Jameson Walker with Virginia Clean Cities, the administrators of this grant. This grant is an ERA-funded grant, originally worth about $19 million, about 8.6 federal, and the rest fleet cost match. The grant is officially called the Southeast Propane Autogas Development Program. The grant is a full package so that you have everything from top to bottom, bottom being the end users, which are the fleets, top being You've got the grant administrators, which is where Virginia Clean Cities comes in. You've got the equipment distributors, American Alternative Fuels. And you've got the autogas suppliers, Blossman and Alliance Autogas. And you've got our marketing department, which is Formation. And then you've got Virginia Clean Cities. And then, of course, you've got the conversion centers who do the installations and the work. Essentially, it's a 13-state, southeastern state corridor for propane, mostly along the I-95 highway system. You've got 35 fleets up and down the east-southeastern coast who will be converting 1,200 vehicles over to run on propane autogas. A little bit about the grant. The grant originally was a $19 million grant, about 8.6 federal and the rest cost match amongst the fleets. We've actually upped that grant, that amount, to be a total value of over $30 million. So we've increased it by about 50%. We've been able to increase the total number of vehicles than ever originally planned. We will officially have 1,202 vehicles within this grant once it's done and finished. We have been able to add on more vehicles, vehicle models and types than ever originally planned. And we've been able to take on and create very strong fleet and partnerships with very, very well-known and national fleet partners across the country. Veolia Transportation is the world's largest transportation fleet company, and they are a proud partner of this program and are doing 300 vehicles within the grant itself. We also have numerous other fleets, 35 in total, and they're all looking to see immediate savings with very fast fueling infrastructure installation, relatively fast conversion pace of the vehicles, and they will immediately start seeing the savings rolling in. And what we hope is that in the end, this program can be a catalyst for the amount of federal dollars that went into it and for it to grow exponentially with their savings to be able to buy more and more and more. Propane is about $1.50 to $1.60 cheaper than gasoline, and we anticipate that staying relatively the same throughout the coming years, which could really lead to a lot of great savings and you know, essentially this program being a catalyst.
Well, good morning. Glorious day here in Western North Carolina. There's no more beautiful place to have a meeting than on the Biltmore Estate in Western North Carolina. I appreciate everyone coming out today. We've got a great crowd. Appreciate you coming out, taking time out of your busy schedules to be with us today to learn a little bit more about propane as an alternative fuel, the vehicles that are available, the fueling technology that is available, and you'll actually get to see some of the vehicles out in the parking lot when we finish today at noon. If you do leave early, they are out in Lot C in the Antler Hill parking lot, so you can take a look at the vehicles. We've got about a half dozen of them out there. And I'm Bill Aker. I'm Environmental Services Director with the Land of Sky Regional Council. It's a regional planning and economic development organization that serves the Asheville metropolitan region. We do a lot here at Land of Sky. Part of what we do is administer various environmental programs. And we set up a clean air campaign to address air quality issues about 12 years ago. I'm the coordinator of the Regional Clean Air Campaign. And about 7 years ago, we got involved in the U.S. Department of Energy Clean Cities program that promotes the use of alternative fuels and advanced technology vehicles across the country for the purpose of reducing petroleum use, helping us get off foreign oil, improve air quality, create jobs. It's a great program. There's a brochure out there on the table about the Clean Cities program if you're not familiar with it. I encourage you to go to the website and learn a little bit more. On that Clean Cities website, lots of information about all of the various alternative fuels and technologies, including propane. So I encourage you to go to that. We are seeking Clean Cities designation for the Asheville metropolitan area, a 5-county area around Asheville. We've submitted our program plan to Department of Energy. It's just gone to their headquarters in Washington. So hopefully within a couple of months, we will become the 3rd designated Clean Cities coalition here in North Carolina. There's one serving the Charlotte region and the Triangle region as well. And they're scattered all over the country, and there's a map of those coalitions in the Clean Cities brochure. So we're really excited about being designated and being an official part of the program, but we have been working towards promoting alternative fuel vehicles and technologies for about 7 years, and working together with all of our fleet managers and others in the region. We've done a lot of great work. We've reduced a lot of petroleum through the various fuels and technologies. So I want to just welcome you to today's Propane Roadshow. This is one of about a dozen roadshow events that are being held across the southeastern U.S. As part of the stimulus-funded Southeast Propane Development Program. And Alan Harted with Virginia Clean Cities is going to tell you a little bit more about that in just a second. So we're real pleased to host this event here today and be a part of that region-wide effort. And I just wanted to thank all of the sponsors of our event. And I am over 50, so I'm going to have to get my glasses out to read this. We've also got a sponsor board out there. You can see them on that. But the Land to Sky Clean Vehicles Coalition, that's the group of stakeholders here locally that's working on our Clean Cities program. We're the local host. I want to thank Blossman Gas, David Finder, Steve Whaley. Those folks have been, and Stewart, have been great supporting us here in our region. Alliance Autogas, also, you'll be hearing from them today. The Southeast Propane Autogas Development Program is helping to fund this event. Virginia Clean Cities Coalition that Alan supports or serves. Also German Motor Works, that's a facility here in Buncombe County that converts vehicles to propane as a certified conversion facility. We're pleased to have them here in our county. Also Superior Energy that's helping cover the food cost of our event, and Roush Clean Tech. And you'll be hearing from Chelsea Jenkins a little later from Roush. And appreciate all the speakers being here today. And again, all of you for coming out. So with that, I will turn it over to Alan. He'll tell you a little bit more about Virginia Clean Cities and the Southeast Propane Program. Alan?
Great, Bill. Thank you for being here, or thank you for inviting me here, and everybody, thank you for coming. It's awesome to have sort of a full house for this roadshow, and all of this is possible at the local level. Virginia Clean Cities is happy to be here, but the Clean Cities program doesn't exist without local leadership, and we appreciate everybody in the coalition down here, and especially Bill's work. We're going to hear today about propane being a cleaner, cheaper domestic option that really works with vehicles. We've got vehicles and mowers outside, and we're demonstrating a large number of vehicles that just work on this technology. We're creating a new market, in effect, in the United States, with especially in the Southeast United States, and sort of reinforcing that this technology works with our program. That's a Recovery Act program, the Southeast Propane Autogas Development Project. This project is a fantastic leverage point. We were using $9 million in federal funds and about $20 million in state, local, and private cost share to accelerate the deployment of propane autogas throughout southeastern states. It's a program management exercise, but it wouldn't be possible without the fuel availability, without the kits and the conversions of the vehicles, and without the stations. So I certainly thank Stewart and Alliance for pulling together what is a true partnership on the fueling and infrastructure side, as well as all the many other partners that we'll hear partially from today, but that have been involved in this project, and they are too numerous to list. We're linking up with public and private fleets up and down I guess all throughout the United States at this point, but it's major fleets and a whole variety of deployment options. So at the end of this project, we'll have a lot of good examples for how successful autogas can be deployed. And we're linking up with a lot of Clean Cities coalitions as a result. And Bill is an example of one of those. This roadshow is part of our educational efforts, just explain this fuel. The real goal here is to displace petroleum and provide cleaner air as a result. So at the end of this project, we expect 4 million gallons of gasoline to be displaced running those vehicles on propane. And then it will hopefully also create a sustainable growth in the propane vehicle industry, have people more aware of the technology and the fuel, and more fleets deploying even outside this project. I'd like to thank Kevin Finder with my team, who has been pulling this roadshow program together, and Jameson Walker, who is our project lead. Very appreciative for their fine work. And as far as the education component is concerned, I do also want to thank the formation team for pulling all this together. They've done a fantastic job on materials and outreach and education components. So through the project, we're looking at more than 1,200 vehicles. We're looking at infrastructure from Maryland to Florida, across to Mississippi. And we're looking at growing and building our partnerships and relationships so that we address all the problems that need to be addressed, and that we really have a deployment model for propane going forward. And we're already leveraging that in Virginia with state efforts, but here in North Carolina, we'd love to do whatever we can to help you, help fleets deploy more fuel, help conversion stations for more vehicles, et cetera. So we're talking about jobs for installation, fueling, and transport, and a sustained market for propane autogas that's developing. Really appreciate, again, Bill and the team for inviting us here to Asheville today and for leading this wonderful show. Beautiful place and great weather. So, Bill, if you want to come back up, or I could also just introduce the next speaker. But if you're emceeing, so thank you all.
Thank you, Alan. Appreciate it. I wanted to recognize one special guest that's here today, John Mitchell. John, if you'll stand up. John is the Western North Carolina rep for U.S. Senator Richard Burr, and John has been quite active in our coalition over the years and has been very supportive. And John, we appreciate you coming out, and appreciate the senator's support. I don't know if there are any other elected officials or special guests here today. I know we have a couple of elected sheriffs, Bobby Suttles from Haywood County, and then you'll be hearing from Buncombe County Sheriff Van Duncan a little bit later on. I don't know if he's here yet. All right, our next speaker is Stuart Weedy. Excuse me. He's the president and CEO of Blossman Gas and also the president of Alliance Autogas. And he's going to talk about how propane is being used across the world. And there's a lot of use of propane, especially in other countries. And we hope to increase it here. So with that, I'll turn it over to Stuart. Thanks for being here and all your support.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here, and it's nice to see everyone. We do have a full room. It's great. I am going to talk a little bit about autogas, which is nothing more than the term used for propane when it goes into vehicles. It's the same thing with a few twists that goes into grill cylinders or into tanks at people's homes to heat their water and their furnaces and so forth. But we're using the term autogas primarily because that's the term globally that's used when propane goes into vehicles. And I'm also want to give you a few thoughts because propane is, we believe, obviously, one of the most important contributors to making improvements and creating a sustainable transportation sector here in the United States that meets a number of objectives, such as improving the air quality we have, reducing the amount of imports that we need to keep our vehicles running, but also to meet objectives to use domestic products. So I'm going to talk a little bit also in just a moment, and I don't have a PowerPoint, so good news there, but about any alternative fuel program. There's some components to it that I think are necessary, whether it's on natural gas or CNG or biodiesel or electrification. All of those need to be part of the solution in our country if we're expecting to make some improvements and meet the objectives that we have as a nation. But I want to start again and talk about the three things that propane autogas does. And there's strong environmental components to it. And I think these three things should be a part not just of what an offering that we do with propane has, but also any alternative fuel. And the first one is economics. A lot of times we get into debates. I personally avoid any debate about global warming or climate change, whether man-made or not. But I think it's important that we can all agree that we want clean air and we want green land. So if you use clean air and green land and try to pull people together instead of debating peripheral issues, I think it's a good starting place. So we all want those things. That's one of the components, is to do a good job from an environmental standpoint. But most alternative fuel programs that are available today, I think you'll see improvements over the next 5, 10, and in some technologies 25 years, but you need to be economic. Whether it's a municipality, a sheriff's department, a transportation fleet of some sort, economics is a very important factor for any decision maker. Now, the other thing that we're doing here in the United States, we talk about energy independence. We'll never be energy independent in the United States. It's an impossible goal. It's not going to happen. We can be less dependent on foreign imports. And if we only make incremental improvements of reducing it by 10%, either through mileage per gallons, improvements on the vehicles that are out there, or the adoption of alternative fuels, a 10% improvement in that area using domestic products of some sort can make a dramatic improvement in reducing the energy security issues that we have in this country related to our lack of independence. So one of the things that I want to start by saying on autogas is, maybe here in the United States it's perceived this way, but globally, autogas or propane going into vehicles is not an experiment. It's proven. There are 18 million vehicles globally running on propane autogas. Unfortunately, there are only 200,000 here in the United States. The rest of the world has adopted it at a much higher level for a variety of reasons. But we've been very slow here in the United States, and I think it's fair to say that we could go through the list of reasons. But the interesting thing is, if you look at some of the countries, South Korea, I'll just read off a few of them. South Korea has 2.3 million vehicles running on autogas. Turkey, with a population of 74 million people, you know, less than a fifth of what we are here in the United States, or right, just slightly more than a fifth rather, has 2.7 million vehicles running on propane autogas. India has 1.5 and is growing by 300,000 or 400,000 annually. And Australia has roughly 750,000 vehicles running on propane autogas with a population of 23 million people. So again, we've been slower to adopt propane autogas as one of our alternative fuel options here in this country. And I think the fact that we've got the vast majority of the production here in the United States. Last year, 98% of all propane in the United States was produced here. That number is increasing because a considerable portion of it, now approximately 70%, comes from natural gas production, what's called the natural gas liquids, or NGLs, that come out of gas wells. And we've got, as many of you all are aware and reading, an abundant supply of natural gas in this country. As long as there's natural gas coming out of the ground, there's going to be a lot of propane too. But there are right now approximately 27 billion gallons being produced in the United States. Only 9 billion gallons of that is being sold at the retail level. The rest of it is being exported. We're a net exporter of propane. And by the way, the only reason we're 98% Canadian is product is coming down here in the United States, so that affects the why we're not 100%. But we're a net exporter of propane in this country, and will continue to be so in the foreseeable future unless we create some demand. So we've got a considerable amount of product that's available for the marketplace. Primarily, we're focused on it at Alliance Autogas fleet customers because they can realize the most benefit with the higher mileage, central refueling, and things of that sort. If we're looking at the retail, what I call the retail level, the end consumer, people driving to and from work, electrification, hopefully without coal-fired power generation is a part of that. And electrification environmentally doesn't make much sense the way we're doing it today. I think a lot of people, as they dig into it, are figuring that out. But electrification does make sense for people commuting to and from work. CNG in certain vehicle types, in certain applications, is a solution for many people. But propane autogas is also a viable solution that, as the title in the agenda says, it's right here and it's right now. Well, one of the things that I get asked often, particularly when, not my favorite thing to do, but I go to Washington. John's in the back of the room there, and I visit with legislators, senators, and congressmen, and so forth. One of the questions I frequently get is, this is so great, why haven't I heard about it? So that's a great question. And I struggled and stumbled around on that answer. But there's some fundamental structural differences in the propane industry here in the United States compared to other countries and other nations that are adopting it at a much greater level for vehicle use in terms of autogas. One is there are 4,000 propane companies in the United States, very fragmented industry. And you contrast that to most other countries, usually it's a state oil company or one of the larger oil companies such as Shell or BP that also own the retail propane business in those areas. And there may only be 2 or 3 companies in an entire nation, not 4,000, and they have a lot of political clout. They can move things very quickly, and when there's a good solution that's available, they can drive it into the marketplace. I think that's one of the primary reasons. You see other nations doing a little better than us here in the United States. The other is, I think, until 5 years ago, we really, here in this country, did not have the technology to put on the vehicles. In the 1970s, in the 1980s, propane autogas was really starting to penetrate the markets. I know in 1985, our company, Blossom & Gas, 25% of every gallon it sold was going into vehicles. School buses, police cars, heating and air company fleets, and so forth. 4 years ago, it was less than 1%. And the reason it disappeared, and the reason it evaporated, is because we didn't have the technology here in this country to get on the modern engines. But I have a great degree of confidence. Not only do we have it for the vehicles now, as you start to see, those of you that understand fleets and have a good sense, direct injection engines are going to be in every sedan, whether it's in 2 or 5 years. Somewhere in the next 3 to 5 years, you're going to see direct injection engines. We already have technology for propane autogas that's going to work on those. We're also working on larger engines. You hear a lot about, in the Pickens plan, getting the over-the-road trucks to run on natural gas. That may make sense, but we're also going to have technology to go on these larger engines in the propane autogas market. And one of our great advantages is the implementation costs are significantly less. We can put in 15 propane autogas refueling stations for every 1 CNG. And so as we move it forward with technology becoming available, not just for the light sedans and vans and transportation vehicles, but into the medium and heavier duty engines, I think there's a great potential for this product to do well. And lastly, I think we've had cheap energy in this country, whether we like to admit it or not. At $3.85, which is what I was driving down the road this morning, currently for low-leaded gasoline, we think that's expensive. The rest of the world think that's a great bargain. And it was even less expensive 3 years ago, but really 5 years ago, going back 20. $1.29, $1.79. So there wasn't the economic incentive that exists today. And I'm sure a lot of people can disagree with us, but I think we are in a different energy environment and will be for the next several decades than we have been in the past 2 or 3. So glad to be here, glad to see you all here. We're going to have some presentations that'll go into more detail and have the nice PowerPoint slides and everything. But it's not an experiment. It's one of the options, and we think it's one of the most viable options because it meets the economics, the environmental objectives we have, and it can contribute to reducing the imports from foreign sources that we have to fuel a more sustainable transportation sector. So thanks for being here, and good to see you.
Thanks, Stuart. Appreciate that. Next, I'd like to introduce my good friend, Steve Whaley. Steve is in charge of research and development with Alliance Autogas, has also worked with Blossom Gas, and has been really valuable to our coalition, providing a lot of technical assistance to us and telling us all about propane and the benefits. And so Steve will tell us all about the vehicles and fueling options. And Steve, thanks for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Bill. I appreciate it. This is a lot of fun. This is probably the most funnest part of my job is being able to tell the story. I think the gospel is great news, and I'm not comparing it to that, but this is really good news too. We have a solution that allows us to do something better than what's existing. I often get to speak at the National Alternative Fuel Vehicle Conference, where we have a panel of all the alternatives up here, from electric to hydrogen, CNG, E85, the biodiesels, and I often get to speak about propane. And one of the things I challenge all the other alternative energies in transportation with is, if you can't do it less expensive and less emissions and keeping it domestic, go home and get something, until you can. Because unless we have something that's cheaper than gasoline, less expensive to put in infrastructure, and keep it out of our own soil, it's not going to be sustainable. I just came from a North Carolina Sustainability Conference last week, and it was all about sustainability. But if it's not economically sustainable, you can grant fund these things to death, but as soon as the grant fund goes away, then it doesn't grow. I'm happy to say all of our programs grow. When we get started with something, they see the financial savings that they have, and they want to do more. Can you start hitting this? We're going to go through some of these. Just like Stuart said, it's the propane is what the rest of the world calls autogas when it's in here. These are the 3 reasons people get into this: the lower fuel costs, the reduced emissions, and a domestic fuel. Most folks go for it here. A lot more folks are going for it here. I like what Sheriff Stan Evans said several years ago when he asked me to go to the National Sheriff's Association and tell the rest of the 3,800 sheriffs about this. I asked him, well, why did you do this? And was it lower fuel cost, reduced emissions? He goes, I got tired of sending money overseas to people who like to hurt my friends. And that was one of his big motivating factors to make that happen. As Stuart was saying, most of our propane here in the United States comes from mining for natural gases, but you can see some of the progression of how it gets distributed to all the places that we use. One of the things that I find very interesting is we have here in these United States the largest capacity for storing propane than any other country in the world. We have more underground caverns, and since propane cannot contaminate soil or water sources, we can keep it right up here underground until we tap it and get it to where we need to go. The reduced emissions part of it, these are 2 very popular platforms. In our Crown Vics, Lincoln Town Cars, and so forth, a 4.6-liter engine. You can see the reductions that we have in those emissions, especially in the van transports. And Mountain Mobility, right here in the Asheville area, was one of the early adopters. We're seeing a 78% reduction in NOx. And if you go to those EPA monitoring sites, that's one of the things that they're picking up the most on and what they're most concerned about because of our ozone levels. Whenever a county gets near non-attainment and interim non-attainment, these kinds of projects help them get out of it. The price of propane is a whole lot more stable than gasoline, and it's always been lower. Okay, and right now, I think I was doing some bids just yesterday at $1.48 a gallon, less than what they were paying for gasoline. We're all used to seeing it here. I mean, we've been doing this for decades and decades inside an internal combustion engine, inside a warehouse. We've been running propane. Why? This is an interactive part of the session here.
It's not harmful to breathe.
I'm sorry?
It's not harmful to breathe inside.
It's not harmful to breathe. Thank you. Most of the time people say it's because the EPA regulated. I said, well, before the EPA in 1972, we were running these, and it was because of what Jeff said. People don't die from the exhaust, okay? You run gasoline inside, people die. You run diesel inside, people die. Run propane inside, people don't die. It's a good thing to do inside. Now the whole world is our warehouse, okay? And we need to treat it as such, if you would. Anything that runs on gasoline, we can make run on propane, I promise. Some of the things that we got started with several years ago, about 5 years ago, there's actually one of these out in the parking lot, thanks to Jeff, and I hope you go out there and take a drive on it and burn the tires. But anything that runs on gasoline, Lear went out, I have one of these in my garage now, it's a little twist canister that you put inside and make it go. It works really well. Anything, now there's, what is it, David Finder, can you help me, 14 OEMs now running on auto, or on propane in their motors?
Offer an OEM propane commercial motor.
The city of Rona, Virginia did this, I think it was 5 years ago, we put their first mowers in there because of the ozone days. They could not run their mowers on ozone days because of the pollutants, and so they switched them all to propane so they could keep their production up every day. Yes. Thank you. I don't know how many folks have been to airports and watched the tug drivers. Someone asked me, he says, you know, I've never seen linemen smile like that before. Why are they smiling? Of course I told them because they're running on propane. But we changed over the 4300s in here with a single barrel carburetor on it are filthy dirty. Okay, the EPA is now climbing into the off-road vehicles and cleaning these things up. But these things stay on the tarmac for decades. And they'll rebuild that straight 6-cylinder engine over and over again with that same carburetor on there, putting out the same pollutants all the time. This one right here, we put a tailpipe emission tester up on gasoline, do it on propane, 98% reduction in carbon monoxide. It was huge, okay? We can go to the next slide. Anything that runs on propane, we can make run on gasoline, but we're here to talk mostly about what fleets are doing. We made a very strategic effort to go after first responders in this arena. People thought we were crazy because there is no one more particular about the reliability and the performance of their vehicles than first responders, law enforcement. If we can make it here, we can make it anywhere. We have thousands of taxi cabs that run on propane autogas around the country. If someone shows up with a taxi cab late because of an unreliable vehicle, someone is just very inconvenienced. One of these guys shows up late, people can die. So I'm very proud of the fact that we're on 25 law enforcement agencies right now in the Southeast, and that's growing every day. Okay. But Bluebird Bus, Collins, Thomasville, all of them have OEM solutions now. Chelsea will tell you a little bit more about the Roush system that goes on the Bluebird Bus. But every one of these, and if you can hit the next slide, as well as these moving up into the larger platforms, all run on autogas. The next slide, please. The approach that we've taken is more of a response to what wasn't happening about 5 years ago. You'd have individual solutions, whether it was onboard technology, whether it was infrastructure, or whether it was the fuel, but nobody was really putting it all together for a fleet manager to be able to implement this into their fleet. So we put together an approach that helps consult with those fleet managers to equip them not only with the onboard technology, but also the infrastructure, and then support it with fuel, training, safety, and maintenance of all of it, and keeping it all together. Here's an example of that consultative approach. Typically what we'll do with our sales force is take a vehicle inventory list from a fleet. We'll get the make, model, and year, make sure we have EPA certificates of conformity to line up with it. We'll take their gasoline usage. This happens to be a fleet of E450 vans. You can see the gasoline usage is very high on a yearly basis. They were spending, I think the last price was $3.15. These are without road taxes, obviously. And spending $27,000 a year to pay in gasoline. Propane has about a 90% combustion efficiency for a gasoline gallon equivalent. In other words, if you're getting 10 miles a gallon on gasoline, you get 9 miles a gallon on propane. So there is a little bit of combustion efficiency less than gasoline. Gasoline is a great fuel, 126,000 BTUs of energy in it. Propane has about 92,000 BTUs, but we get about 90% gasoline gallon equivalent. So if you're getting 8,640 gallons of gasoline in a year in that vehicle, you're going to use 9,500 gallons of propane. But look at the cost difference here, saving $9,000 a year in this van. Okay? Even if you didn't want to spend any money up front to get this implemented into your fleet because you just don't have the capital to make it happen, we also have leasing and capital funds to make that happen as well. It's about $200 a month per vehicle. Add that in, and there's still a net savings with $0 out of your pocket. And that's month one. I love doing this job. Everybody likes making the monies at the end come out right side up with an alternative energy. Next slide, please. What we typically do is work with existing fleets. Chelsea's going to talk to you about the OEM solutions that you can buy new on vehicles up front. But with your existing fleets now, we can make a difference in your use of alternative energy by upfitting them with an additional fueling system. It's a bi-fuel system. It allows you to push a button and run on propane and push a button and run on gasoline. Most of our fleets keep about 1/8 of a tank of gasoline in there, just in case. But more and more of them are finding that they don't even need to use very much of it at all. You can go to one of our conversion centers, and we have a couple of them represented here. Scott, thanks for being here. Mr. Shepard, thank you for being here. Did I miss anybody? John Collins. Whoa! Sorry, John. Please forgive me. Up from Georgia, thank you. Our conversion centers, that'll take care of getting your vehicles upfitted. And then Alliance Autogas completes that with having the infrastructure and a very competitive fuel agreement to allow you that $1.40, $1.50 a gallon savings. Next slide. This is what it looks like on the vehicle. And if you go downstairs out in the parking lot, you'll see inside the vehicle is a very small little footprint. But the number of green lights here will tell you how much fuel is in the vehicle. 4 green lights is full all the way down to 1 green light being 1/4 of a tank. But you can push this button at any cycle when the engine is running to switch from one fuel to the other. We'll have a training session for the drivers, you know, of some of the paratransit vans and law enforcement officers. They like pushing the button. The first couple of weeks, you know, they just, hey, look at this, showing all their friends, hey, look at this thing runs on propane. After that, it gets a little, you know, old hat. They leave it on propane and just leave a little bit of gasoline in there to start up in the morning. The vehicle technology that goes in the engine compartment fits in a box. What's it, Charles, about this big? Yeah, all the components that are in there. Nothing comes off the vehicle, but just an overlay of an additional fueling system. Next slide. This is the components that go on here. I'd love to point these out on the vehicles outside when we go to that part, so I won't spend a whole lot of time doing that here. Go to the next slide. One of our centers in Greenville, South Carolina. Folks ask about the EPA certificates of conformity. That's one of the reasons why we're staying with fleets in a controlled environment. Those are real popular vehicles, and we can disperse the large investment that it takes to get an EPA certificate of conformity over a lot of vehicles. Can you hit the next slide, please? Tank configurations. You'll see a lot of the law enforcement agencies with a tank in the upper shelf of the trunk, all the way to some very large tanks if you want to drive to Florida and back. I think Chelsea could do that with her Roush vehicle. What is this, a 60-gallon capacity here? Chelsea? Yes. And most of the other ones go up underneath the vehicle, behind the differential, in between the frame rails, so it doesn't take up any other space. Warranty issues, whether it's a Roush system or a clean fuel system, sort of Ford or GM, or whether it's the Alliance Autogas system with the American Alternative Fuel Prince system being installed, does not affect the original manufacturer warranty. And go to the next slide. Here are some of those folks. You might recognize the mountain mobility vehicles here. Airport shuttle. I think this is out of the Mobile facility, isn't it? Colorado Cab. This is Greenville, South Carolina, as well as our friends in Muskogee. He's here today too. Where's he? There you are. Thanks for being here. He has one of his vehicles out here as well. The infrastructure portion of it, this is where it really makes a difference. The biggest, or the weakest link, I should say, in adoption of alternative energies has been how do we have an infrastructure to dispense energy into these vehicles? There's some great hydrogen solutions, EV solutions, as well as my neighbor has a Tesla, fast little electric car. I love that thing. And I'll chase him around at our Crown Vic at media events quite often. But it goes 49 miles. And then he's done. It's a fun 49 miles, it really is. But the infrastructure for getting plugged back in is a little bit of a challenge because it's very expensive. One of the things and advantages of propane autogas is the infrastructure is very inexpensive. And literally over a weekend, we've taken some of our skid-mounted dispensers with a tank and put it in place, and it's a clothes dryer outlet to get it started. That's a 220, 30 amp circuit. And then we can pump 10 gallons in there. Doesn't take very long to fill these up. Next slide, please. I think this is your place down here too, yeah, in Columbus, Georgia. It's very scalable. All you need to worry about is this part here, squeezing the handle, making sure the fuel gets dispensed in your vehicle, and then Alliance Autogas takes care of the rest. As your infrastructure needs grow, we will grow with you and put the appropriate tank sizes in there with telemetry that tell us exactly the level of contents of your tank, so we always keep it full, and all you need to worry about is squeezing the handle and dispensing the fuel. You would, the next slide. Here is at German Motor Works, right over here off of Sweeten Creek Road. Where are you? There you are, Scott. Where this is a public station as well. I believe it's, what time this afternoon?
4:15.
4:15, and we're going to be over your place. Yeah. Converting vehicles as well as fueling them as well. This is Detroit. We have hundreds of cars there. This is an 18,000 gallon tank. We size these appropriately for the fleets that are being fueled. And the dispensers will go right up underneath the canopy and lights and interface in with your current fuel data management system, whether you have Fuel Master, Track, Gas Boy, all of those. You'll have pump 1 for gasoline, pump 2 for diesel, pump 3 for propane, and so forth. Pretty soon we're going to get that switched around to pump 1 for propane. We're not going to be the alternative anymore. I think gasoline is going to be the alternative. Yeah. Next slide, please. Cleveland, no, Cincinnati, Cleveland, Ohio. Thank you. Lots of these. Stuart had mentioned going into the fleets. The higher the use of fuel, the greater the turnaround. If you saw that other particular slide, the more gasoline you can take off of the market and replace it with something that much cheaper, the more savings that you're going to have. And those are great vehicles for making that happen. Gaston County, and just south of Charlotte, had 30 of their drivers for a training session I was providing on which buttons to push to get the dispensing of the fuel. We also have a sheriff from Greenville, South Carolina. He has an 18,000 gallon tank here, but they've been growing. They have 126 of their 400 vehicles now. And they needed another station in the north part of the county and another station in the south part of the county. No problem. We like doing that. Next slide. Some of the stats on the mountain mobility. They actually took the first set of 10 systems that they had on the 2008 vehicles. After those vehicles were retired, the systems come off, thanks to Scott. They were put on their new 2012 vehicles. So they get another life cycle out of the $5,800 conversion cost. Did I mention that? $5,800 conversion cost is right around there? $5,800 to $6,200 depending on the tank configuration. You might want to write that one down. And then compare it to any other alternative energy that you would like. Good, next slide. Mountain Mobility has the option of fueling over at Sweeten Creek with Scott at German Motor Works, or at their own facility we put in their parking lot right down there next to the river. The city of Raleigh recently put their first 10 vehicles on the road, and I'm glad to say after just a few months of their fuel cost savings, they've doubled that now, and with 20 vehicles, and they have the intent to do their entire fleet. They have 790 vehicles there. Next slide. Where gasoline and diesel can't go, we can. Remember how we talked about you cannot contaminate the soil or the water? Where gas tanks up underneath the ground with the risk of that seepage can't get in? This is downtown Raleigh at the police headquarters, and we get to go right up underneath the tree in the parking lot, integrate in with a remote fuel master station, and it fits right in with all of them and get their vehicles filled right on site. The next one. Statesville, Iredell County was another early adopter. They're on their third phase now of implementation of vehicles. And where it starts with law enforcement, now it's gone into their paratransits. Their paratransit group there, ICATS, is they did 4 vans. And in the first month, Ben Garrison, the fleet manager over there, sent a report to the county manager saying, we saved $1,800 in our first month of fuel cost savings. That's over $400 a month per vehicle. At a $200 a month lease, is it hard to make the leap to do the rest of their 30 vans? Yes. Please, next slide. They actually set this up at one of their EMS facilities there because it was a common place for all the vehicles to intersect. I thought I would, I like baseball scoreboards. And so I work with a lot of the Clean City Coalition folks around the country, and I like keeping score, okay? So I asked all of them to do the same. This is our first quarter for North Carolina only fleets. From the Iredell, town of Knightdale, Raleigh, all the way down Buncombe County Sheriff and our own vehicles. This is first quarter number of vehicles that have been converted and the gallons of propane that have been used. So we're taking, in first quarter alone, almost 50,000 gallons of fuel off the market from having, like Stan Evans said, sending money overseas to people who like to our friends. I love when we do this and compare it to all the other fuels, because I like being on the winning team.
Is there a cash prize if any of our entities
Is there a
get Gaston and Raleigh to kind of slow their use down a little bit?
That looks good. That looks really good. It is sustainable. Okay, it's sustainable because it's economically sustainable. It's sustainable because the technology on board works and works again in the next generation vehicles. And the fuel is here domestic. That's why it works. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
Actually, we're running way ahead of time, so let's take some questions for Steve. Steve, is that okay? Sure. Go ahead and this is your opportunity, before we get back into the other presentations, to ask those questions. But you
now, don't make me stand up here and not take a question. Somebody has.
Steve, did you talk about how when you retire the vehicle from the fleet, you're able to move that kit to a new vehicle and what that cost might be? Did you address that?
We talked about taking the vehicles off of Mountain Mobilities, and because there were a local one here, 2008 E350s, they were having on the 5.4 liter engine. Now they're being switched over to the 2012. Scott, how long did that take to do?
It took about a day and a half, each vehicle.
Okay. So with the original cost of it being installed being $6,000 or less, do you mind sharing approximately how much it would cost to take one system off and put it on next?
It was about $2,000.
Very good. What else?
How much fluctuation do you have in price in propane? And as you build more demand, what kind of projections do you have with the price going up?
Stuart.
Yeah, that's a good question. Just to give you an idea, in 2005, the retail propane industry was selling 12.5 billion gallons per year. This past year, we only sold 9 billion gallons. So we've got 3.5 billion just from what we were doing 6 or 7 years ago. There's more now propane being produced. The fluctuations in price are global driven. They're not supply and demand driven because we've got plenty of it here in this country. Propane costs more than in Europe and in Asia, just like natural gas does. Natural gas right now in Japan, as an example, is about $18 per million BTUs, and we're right around 2. So and natural gas is not global yet because they haven't built the export terminals. But if you took, there's something called an R2 correlation, and it's a correlation between gasoline prices and propane prices. And we've consistently stayed between $1.50 and $1.60 less per gallon than gasoline. And as that chart Steve showed a little bit earlier indicated, we're lower, but there's more volatility in this area. So even if we add 5 or 10 billion gallons in the auto gas market, we don't think that's going to have any significant effect on the volatility. That was a longer question or answer than I think maybe that's a good question.
That's great.
Yes, Lauren. Historic fuel prices, how long has that tracked lower than the gasoline prices?
Oh, for decades, but we've only been tracking it in our data since 2005.
Okay.
And it's $1.58 for the past 24 months, and the prior 3 years it was $1.35. But that included a 50 cents per gallon fuel credit that existed that evaporated December 1 or January 1 of this year. So it was averaging 85 cents less per gallon than gasoline without the credit. Today, without the credit, we're averaging $1.58 less. So that's when, you know, the ethanol had it, natural gas had it, propane had it, biodiesel. There were some other at 50 cents per gallon credits. When they expired, our competitive positions actually expanded.
Do you allow your customers to lock in these strips?
We'll do that for our customers. If a customer would like to one of the things we do is we'll guarantee a differential between gasoline and propane for what a period of time you'd like to do. Now, of course, we'll also lock it in for a year or 2 years, a fixed price. So we've got all sorts of options available for our customers to either guarantee the differential between gasoline and propane or lock in a price for a propane autogas over the course of whatever period of time you designate.
Most of the fleets that we're working with have an indexed price from a particular terminal, plus a certain fee on top of that to get it transported there, take care of all the infrastructure, and maintain it. And it still ends up being $1.50 a gallon less. Good stuff. Well, University of South Carolina, I was just telling you about that. This is Western North Carolina.
Western Carolina University.
I knew I was going to say that. Thank you for being here. We were just talking because I was finished a project with 20 vehicles at the University of South Carolina in Columbia.
Since we've had one introduction, let's go around the room since we've got some extra time to do introductions. We failed to do that earlier. So I guess we introduce Stuart and Alan. Starting over here, going on back.
Olga Whaley.
Could you speak up?
Olga Whaley with Alliance Autogas.
Okay, great.
She's with me.
We're going to keep the family going. I'm Derek Whaley, and I'm in the Atlanta market with Alliance Autogas.
Okay, great. Lauren Bishop.
I'm Lauren Bishop, Energy Manager at Western Carolina University.
David Light, Branch Manager for Blossman Gas here in Asheville.
Wendell Garcia, Branch Manager for Blossman Gas in Waynesville.
Lane Cochran, Branch Manager for Blossman Gas in Silk.
Jeff Howell with Blossman Gas in Swananoa.
Birds of a feather.
Giff Anthony, Muskogee SO, Columbus, Georgia.
Thank you. That's a long drive.
Jerry Farmer, City of Newport News, Virginia.
Teresa Farmer, I'm with them.
Deputy Keith Cushman, Buncombe County Sheriff's Office.
Ben Stillwell, Buncombe County Sheriff's Office.
Do you guys have some vehicles that you brought with you?
Yes.
I'm Parn Iberger with Certification Services International, local company.
Mike Barrett, Veolia Transportation.
Mark Rogers, I'm the golf course superintendent at the Grove Park.
Chris Watts, Branch Manager for Blossman Gas.
Tracy Korn, Assistant Mechanic at Grove Park Inn.
Corey Ball, Branch Manager at Blossman Gas, Hendersonville.
Tom Wooten, City of Hendersonville Public Works Director.
Conley Smith, Fleet Manager, Ken Wilson Ford.
Angela DeVoyne, Certification Services International.
John Mitchell, Senator Burr's office.
Steve Shepard, Conversion Center out of Spartanburg, South Carolina, lighting up.
Penny Rosenthal, UNCA Transportation.
I'm Deacon King, I'm the fleet manager here on Biltmore Estate.
And I'm Chris Dobbins with the Landeskai Clean Vehicles Coalition and Waste Production Partners Program.
I'm David Finder with Blossman Gas Alliance Autogas here in Asheville, North Carolina.
Garrett Mail, Transportation Coordinator at UNC Asheville.
I'm Shelby Stevens with Formation Strategies from Austin, Texas.
And I'm Lauren Kubicki with Formation Strategies.
Steve Hightower, fleet manager, City of Kingsport.
How many vehicles do you have now running?
15.
15 on
Yeah.
the sheriff, or the police department and
12 cruisers and 3 pickups, and I've got more on order. Plus, I've got propane mowers.
propane.
Yeah, it's gas.
Chelsea Vinkins with Roush Clean Tech.
I'm Buck Cannon, retired oil field trash from Texas. And I used to peddle about 50,000 barrels a day of natural gas liquids to various customers.
Steve Cochran, Sustainability Consultant with Blossman and Alliance.
Terry Albrecht with Waste Reduction Partners and the Landeskai Regional Council.
Chris English, Blue Ridge Community College Dean of Applied Technology.
Chris has been very active in getting alternative fuel curriculum for community college and technical schools, not just in North Carolina, but programs all over. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
Robert Zieber, Quantum Electrical Engineering and Domestic User.
Katie Cook with Virginia Clean Cities.
Kevin Finder, Virginia Clean Cities.
Jameson Walker, the new project lead for this propane grant on the Clean City side.
Ashley Featherstone, Western North Carolina Regional Air Quality.
David Brigman, Western North Carolina Regional Air Quality.
Charles Gregory, Force 911.
And you guys do conversions of all these vehicles out of
Conversions.
How many facilities have?
4 and growing.
4 and growing.
John Collins, Force 911.
I'm Dave O'Neill with the Asheville Citizen Times.
Bobby Suttles, Haywood County Sheriff's Office.
David Mitchell, Haywood County Sheriff's Office.
Craig Meadows, Lee County Sheriff's Office in Opelika, Alabama.
I think you get the prize for coming to the farm. Is anyone further than? Oh.
Jack Adair, interested individual.
Scott Spence, German Motor Works of Asheville.
Ray Cockrell, retired fleet manager, mechanic, Warren Wilson College.
Keith Benberger from the North Carolina Division of Air Quality.
David Dance, Asheville Regional Airport Authority.
On Monday, Asheville Regional Airport Authority.
Bill Aker, Landeskai Clean Vehicles Coalition.
Brian Taylor, Landeskai Clean Vehicles Coalition.
It's my pleasure to introduce Buncombe County Sheriff Van Duncan, who was elected here in Buncombe County in 2006. And he's going to tell you a little bit about their propane conversion project. They received some grant funding about a year ago to convert several of their police cruisers, and my understanding is the project's going real well. And Sheriff Duncan, thank you so much for being with us here today.
Yes,
appreciate it.
It's good to be here with y'all. This is really kind of like old home week for me when I come back to the Biltmore Estate. I spent about 6 years over here as their chief of company police, and love coming back here and seeing all my friends and folks that I worked with for a while. Let me talk to you a little bit about our propane project at Buncombe County with our patrol cars. And I'm glad to see several members. I see Sheriff Suttles in the audience out here today. We had some reservations. As we start moving into any new program, of course, as a good, responsible administrator, you're going to ask all those questions. What's the performance? What's the safety rating on the tank? Is there officer dissatisfaction with going to propane? All these different questions. The user ability for the officer to fill the car up, not cause problems. How technical is it? How hard is it to switch back and forth between gas and propane? And as we started to look at the project, what we determined pretty quickly was it was just a win-win. There really weren't any negatives. we had some perceptions with our officers that performance was not up to par. So the first thing that we did is we had Steve come out and bring a propane Crown Vic, and we put some folks in it and drove the vehicle. And what I will tell you is the only performance issue, it's not really a performance issue, you will notice the motor runs a little quieter. And it's really about the only thing they notice in the Crowns. There was a huge concern with the officers about, well, are we going to be able to fill up? And what if we get in a busy night and, you know, we're putting a lot of miles on a cruiser and we can't get back to a propane fill station? Well, the option of being able to switch back to gasoline is a tremendous option for law enforcement because all it is one button on the center of the dash and you're back to running on petroleum. And I'll mention something about that as I close. That really turned out to be a good option for us in a couple of different ways. The safety, there were some concerns about the safety of the tank. And what you find out is that tank is rated for just as much wear and tear, collision, gunfire, whatever, as a gasoline tank, if not better, if not exceeding with gas. So you're not giving up anything safety-wise. As we started looking at just the flat cost in savings, we're looking at about 1/3 across the board. And I think that may be, and those are old figures, I think as propane has gone down and gasoline has gone up, those differences in the numbers are even more extreme now than what they were when we did our comparison and we looked at them. Another great feature is they can upfit the unit off a car that you wear out, that you take out of service. Even though the motors last longer because you're not leaving the carbon in the motor, the cars wear out. We're pretty tough on a patrol vehicle, and usually about 100 to 125,000 miles, even if the motor's good, the car's wore out. But we still have the ability to take that equipment and upfit it to a similar vehicle, similar engine, which was a good selling point for us as well. Now, let me tell you my personal reasons why I'm excited about it. Number one, it's a domestic product. As the young lady was talking earlier, it concerns me to send a bunch, and I mean a bunch of money to foreign countries that we don't exactly always know where that money gets funneled and where it goes. So that's a huge consideration for me. A domestic product that creates jobs and is right here in the USA, that makes you feel good about working through the things that you need to work through to get on a propane program. As I mentioned earlier, the ability to have that propane tank as well as that gasoline tank. I don't know if you guys remember how many of you are from Buncombe County or the surrounding areas, but I guess it's been about 4 years ago now, we went through that crunch. And Western North Carolina got hit extremely hard in gas availability. And we were actually having to put officers at a centralized station downtown to make sure that we could get gas in our cars and respond to calls for service. So the ability to, in an emergency situation, to have a full tank of propane and a full tank of gas. Now, that's not how you run them as in normal operating, but you get an emergency situation, then you've got an effective operating range of about 500, 600 miles before you have to refill the car. And also we have the ability to refill on site at the county garage with both. So as we move forward, we're about somewhere in the neighborhood of about 6 months in. We're going to look at our Crown Victorias at the end of the year. We're going to crunch those numbers, and I feel pretty positive in telling you right now that we're going to push forward in upgrading more of our fleet, and I'm hoping my car's next, Steve. I really want to do mine next because, you know, nothing says you believe in it like taking it on. You can tell those guys it's a great thing, but when you take one, they know it's probably pretty cool and pretty functional. Any questions about our fleet? I have 2 officers here today, and they have a couple of our cars, so feel free to take a look at them. Ask them with me not around if you have any concerns, if they have any concerns in what they've seen in the way of performance and their satisfaction with running propane as opposed to gasoline. Thank you.
Do you have to get out of
Sheriff, I'd say this will probably be in the front of the line on getting your car fixed next.
Sheriff Duncan, thanks for being with us. Appreciate it very much. All right. Great presentation. All right, at this time I'd like to introduce Lori Embry. She's the General Manager of Mountain Mobility, which is the community transportation system here in Buncombe County. We've got a fleet of about 40-some vehicles, 43, and about half of those are running on alternative fuels, and she's going to tell us all about their very successful project. Lori, thanks for being here.
Thank you very much for having me. We're pretty excited about our alternative fuel project at Mountain Mobility. We are a public transportation system for the county. We do about 12,000 trips a month. We have 43 vehicles in our fleet. We're just over half on alternative fuels, and 10 of those vehicles are running on dual fuel propane systems. We have been in Buncombe County for 25 years. We provide door-to-door transportation services, mostly for older adults, folks with disabilities, low income, but we're also open to the general public, and our ridership increases every year. We do about 130,000 miles a month, so we do a lot of driving and a lot of burning of fuel. We use about 13,000 gallons of fuel a month. And having 20% of that as propane is pretty exciting, and we're very happy with it. We started this project in 2009. We received stimulus money. It's about $58,000, I think, to get the 10 Prinz fueling systems and get those installed on 10 of our vehicles. Blossman provided us with an on-site tank, which has a couple of different really positive impacts. One of which is that we don't have to drive anywhere to fill the vehicle, so we don't waste any miles trying to get to a gas station. It's in the parking lot where the vehicles are parked. So that's been a cost savings not related to the fuel itself. So for this project, the only money that the county actually had to put in was about $2,000 to run the electrical to the propane tank. Otherwise, it was covered by grant funds and through Blossman's contribution of that tank. Some of the specifics, like I said, we use the Prinz alternative fueling system. It's dual fuel, so our vehicles can run on gasoline or propane. But with the on-site filling station and with the improved performance that all of our drivers that drive those vehicles have reported, we don't run those on gasoline much at all unless there's some kind of maintenance issue going on, which has been very rare. So we've run these vehicles probably for a couple years now, and we've had 2 of our vehicles. Our vehicles are all from the North Carolina Department of Transportation, and they dictate when their life cycle is up. So it's around 100,000 miles, usually 120 by the time we get the replacement vehicle in. So we've had 2 vehicles with the Prinz systems that have reached their lifetime, and we've actually gone through the process of taking that fueling system off and putting it on a new vehicle. That was around $1,200 to move it from one vehicle to the other, and then with both vehicles we've run into an additional $850 repair. There's a regulator leak that may or may not. It's happened for both of them. I don't know if it'll happen for all 10, but we're kind of looking at $2,000 to move the vehicle, to move the fueling system from one vehicle to another, which is less than half of buying the new system. So it's it just increases the cost effectiveness over the course of those vehicles. Some specific numbers, if that would be helpful, are over the last 9 months we're averaging about 90 cents a gallon savings between what the county pays for gasoline versus what it's paying for propane. As I mentioned, our drivers anecdotally love the propane vehicles. They've noticed increased performance. There's not been any problems. We've had one of the propane vehicles was rear-ended. No problems at all with the fueling system, with the tank. It was, it's very safe, sound system. Again, the on-site tank is it's what, 900 gallons, and that's just been incredible. And it's, you know, on top of all the bottom line stuff, which is really important, it is cleaner burning, and it is domestically produced, and it's something that people can get pretty excited about. And then it does stand up to all the, at least we found, it stands up to all the initial promises that were made in terms of the safety, cost savings, the life of the fueling system, everything. So we can't say enough good things about it. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have about our system.
Any questions for Lori?
How far do you go, Lori, as far as distance-wise in your travels for picking up folks and taking them?
Each vehicle, you mean, we just provide service within Buncombe County, but we found that each vehicle averages around 250 miles a day, and they are able to do that on the tanks that are put on the vehicles. So we have the range that we needed in order to run them all day.
And so what other alternative fuels are you running in your fleet?
We have 11 CNG vehicles as well.
Okay. How is the propane compared to the CNG vehicles?
Well, we have to drive to fill up the CNG vehicles. We're using the City of Asheville's CNG station. The CNG is averaging more of a cost savings per gallon. But we had to, for those, we had to order larger vehicles to get a dual fuel CNG. So normally mountain mobility vans are the converted 15-passenger vans, but the CNG vehicles, we had to get a larger chassis in order to get the tank range. And so those are actually 22-foot cutaways, and in Buncombe County, when you're providing door-to-door service, there's plenty of driveways that those vehicles can't make it up. So there are some limitations because we had to go with the larger vehicles, you know. But overall, we've been very pleased with the CNG as well. I don't want it to sound like I'm not encouraging that. And with the two alternative fuel types, over 50% of our fleet is running on an alternative fuel.
How did the CNG conversion cost compare to the propane?
That is a lot more expensive. We had to, once we found a vehicle that we could get the tank range that we needed, they did that post-factory, and those vehicles, I think, were around $90,000 each, and we were paying, for that vehicle, for just a gasoline, we were paying around $70,000. So it was, you know, close to a $20,000 upfront cost, and we used the ARA funds to purchase those vehicles as well. It was a lot longer. We were running the propane vehicles within a matter of weeks, and we just got the CNG vehicles. I don't think we've had them a year yet. Yeah, but I think we've had them about 9 months. So, and we got the money all at the same time. So it was a lot longer of a project.
Have you had any service issues with the CNG vehicles?
With the CNG vehicles? No, not particularly. We are able to space out our preventive maintenance because it is a much cleaner burning fuel. So we're seeing cost savings there. We're seeing that with the propane vehicles as well.
I noticed you said you were averaging 90 cents per gallon savings. Is that because you get a discounted rate being with the county on regular fuel?
Yes, yeah. If you take the taxes, we don't have to pay tax on the gasoline, and so once you take that out of the factor, we're paying a lot less for gasoline. Yes.
Will the CNG systems be transferable like the Autogas systems?
They are not transferable, no, so that'll just go with the life of the vehicle. But the vehicles are larger, so we're able to run them longer. Any other questions? Great. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Laura. Great job. Okay, up next to tell us about their success with their propane shuttles is Chuck Pickering. Chuck is the President of Agriculture, Government Relations, and Land Planning with the Biltmore Company. And we've been working with Biltmore for quite some time to explore all the alternative fuels, and we're really thrilled that they've converted some of the shuttle buses, and I think we've got one on display outside, as well as the Mountain Mobility vehicle and the Buncombe Sheriff vehicles as well. So I encourage you all to go out and look at those when we're finished here today. Chuck, thanks so much for being here today and also for hosting us here today. We appreciate it. Great venue. Thank you.
Thank you, and glad to have you here. It's an honor to have our law enforcement people, our politicians, our land of sky people, and so many of you who are really involved in this community. I want to say what a great community it is. We've been having a lot of Chinese groups come here over the last year, visiting and seeing what we're up to. And last month I went at our expense with North Carolina Department of Agriculture to Chengdu and Shanghai, China, and spent 8 days over there. So quickly, the thing we realized there was the importance of clean air, clean water, safe food supply, people that are taking care of the environment, and law enforcement. Those are a few things that we're missing over there, and it's a huge difference. You know, they want to do the right thing, and they're working on it, and it's the reason we need to pay attention to it is what Secretary of Ag Troxler said the other day when he was up here, is that hungry people are mad people. And so that's one of the reasons North Carolina's trying to reach out to places like China to help them with that. But the number one thing that occurred to me, and we had a group here yesterday, landscape designers from Shanghai, and they couldn't believe how clean the air is here. And I believe it too. After 8 days over there and 4 days in Shanghai, I went out for 2 hours to walk one day, and then the next day, you know, it was like, whoa, what happened to me? It's like you've been out in this carcinogenic atmosphere, and it's, you know, you need a bubble to operate over there. It's just unbelievable. And so I want to thank Land to Sky and everybody here to clean up our air, because, you know, it's great here. I was talking to a utility guy the other day. Since 1991, the utilities have been spending $1 million a day on cleaning up the air. And those are all the ones that impact us. And so, you know, today our air is so much cleaner than it was 50 years ago, plus when I was growing up here in Asheville and down behind the courthouse where, you know, everything was coal burning. That, I mean, Asheville used to be a pretty rough place for air. Now, proud to say it's one of the best. So on to about our programs. That following in the history of sustainability with Biltmore Estate since 1895 with the cradle of forestry, how to make it productive, how to generate your own electricity, sell back to the community, using modern agricultural practices to save the soil and the land, that moving forward, now we want to see how we can be 100% sustainable with our energy and with our food. And so we've made a lot of decisions in the last 10 years to really monitor what our carbon footprint is, how to reduce that, and the different areas where we can make the most impact. So today, glad to say that thanks to one of my associates here, Dickie King, back here in the back. Dickie, raise your hand. So if anybody's got questions, we'll ask them to Dickie. He started with Biltmore about the same time I did, and we've gone through a lot of vehicles and talked about CNGs, propanes. We've had our advisors who worked with SeaWorld, people that have worked with Disney for us. And I mean, we've looked at all these renewable, or, you know, propane, CNG, all the other possibilities. And we started with Blossom 17 years ago when they rolled out their first propane lawnmower on the front lawn of the Biltmore house, and we were all going, what is this thing, you know? And so we've come a long way. We're glad to have it in 2 of our 15 fleet right now. What we're doing, we're taking our fleet, everybody says, oh, that one's no good anymore, retire it. What Dickie's figured out how to do is to take $6,000, a fully depreciated shuttle wagon, get the interior redone, get it painted, convert it to propane, and boom, we've got one of the best vehicles in our fleet. And it didn't, you know, we run about 4,000 gallons through one of these vehicles a year. So at $1 savings per gallon, you know, that's a 1.5 year payback on your conversion kit right there. That's pretty good, and it might be better than that. So we're going to continue to convert our fleet over the next 15 years, and then we're going to look at new vehicles that we bring online, exactly how we're going to manage that. One of our goals here would be to get everybody that comes to Biltmore out of what one of our guest service guys calls the escape pod, the car, get everybody out of their cars and have a zero emission shuttle around the estate. So that's a long-term vision that we have. It's, you know, to make that pay for itself at all, it's a big challenge. One thing we've stayed away from here at Biltmore is charging people $16 a car to park like they do at Universal or someplace like that. So, you know, we're trying to step in different phases as we can. So let me see if there are any. Oh, one of the big reasons that we chose Blossom to go with is the low cost of getting into this system. With our pumping station, that was a huge consideration for us. Compression's another. You know, we don't like things that are under pressure a lot. That gives us reason for more concern sometime. So this has been a really good conversion for us. The pump station. Oh, I've got some pictures. Pop a picture. Great. Shuttle wagon. Is this one of our redone ones, Dickie? Yep. So this is one that's been redone with our logo, and this is a real workhorse right there. What do they have? Carry about 28 people, something like that. Good. So this is shows our decal. Yeah, there you go. There we go. All right, propane. There we go. Hit one more. This is our. This is the portion of the propane fueling station here. So it's pretty simple to operate, isn't it, Dickie? Yeah. Everything's gone real smooth with this. This is, you know, that's not very elaborate. You know, that's close to a pig cooker with a front on the end of there. So, you know, don't be converting your pig cookers to propane tanks. You can do it the other way maybe. But so we've been pleased with our association here. I think that's the last one on the slide. See if, yeah. So I'll tell you just a little bit more about our other plans for alternative fuels and vehicles. That we've been working with a lot of people here in the community on biofuels and biodiesel. So we've been working with Blue Ridge Biofuels, doing our own research, and so what we're going to do this next year, we're looking to eventually grow all of our fuel would be our goal. Secondly, right now in the near term, we want to be able to produce a B20 that all the 20% comes off the estate. So we're getting ready to plan, we're working with the extension station out here by the airport, NC State, and those people we have 8 different types of canola planted right now. We're going to take the best of category. We're going to plant 50 acres in canola, and we've got up a 3-year field rotation that you have to do with canola. And so that's the highest oil producing seed. So out of 50 acres, we have to get 7,000 gallons of oil, which will be, we use 35,000 gallons a year, so that'll give us a B20. So that's our next piece that we're working with. We work with App State, NC State University, and Blue Ridge Biofuels are our partners in that right now, along with Land to Sky keeping us. I'm glad to hear Ray Cockrell's the expert in telling me that it's my boss, Bill Cecil, who's the president of our company. He wants somebody to be able to guarantee him that it's safe to run 100% biofuel in his big Deweys that they pull horses around with. So I think I found my man today, Ray. We're going to take you downtown to the office right after this, aren't we, Dickie? We get that question a lot. So we're starting with a B10 because you don't have the problems with the B10, and then we'll with changing gaskets out and because it cleans your engine out. So then we'll look at going to a B20 and further. Any questions? Thanks.
Thanks again, Chuck. Appreciate that very much and for having us here today.